Test 1, 2. Hello, hello. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Larry Duncan Allen, and you're watching No More Water, Fire next time. I'm on a little later than I had planned, but you know how it is today. With today's technology, the host is the cameraman, the sound technician, the engineer, everything. That's the way it is nowadays. We don't have to have that big crew like we used to have. Um, Tonight's topic is about being done with the United States. You see what's going on right now? It's nothing new. It's happened before. And it's going to happen again. That's if democracy survives. I don't think democracy is going to survive this time around. It's done. It's already done. You see, this is a reconstruction period. And it's happened many times in the history of this company, of this country. This country. I'm looking at it right here. 1863, Abraham Lincoln signs the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring that the majority of the nation's slave population henceforth shall be free. It said the majority, not all. In 1864, President Lincoln begins Reconstruction in the Union occupied former Confederate state of Louisiana. Lincoln's lenient 10% policy upsets radical Republicans who expect the South to do more to gain readmission and believe Lincoln's approach does not provide enough protection to its slaves. Okay. In July, in response to Lincoln's plan, Congress passes its own, the Wade-Davis bill. It ups the allegiance requirement from 10% to a majority of the state's voters, limits many former Confederates from political participation in state reconstruction, demands blacks receive not only their freedom but equality before the law, and imposes a series of other requirements on the states. Lincoln does not sign the Wade-Davis bill. His, his pocket veto means the bill does not pass into law. November 8th, Lincoln is reelected. He didn't sign it because he wanted to get reelected. Okay, 1865. Some 180,000 blacks have served in the Union Army, over 1/5 of the adult male black population under 45. I want to skip down to the Reconstruction periods, get past the Civil War. Okay, after Lincoln was killed, Johnson became president. And see, because when the first Reconstruction by Lincoln was positive for the slaves, they began to gain political and economic power. And when the whites saw this, and President Johnson, that's Andrew Johnson, came in, he wanted to stop the black progress because anytime there's black progress, there's white backlash. Johnson declares the Reconstruction process complete. Outraged, I better put my glasses on. Outraged radical Republicans in Congress refused to recognize new governments in southern states. More than 60 former Confederates arrived to take their seats in Congress, including 4 generals, 4 colonels, and 6 Confederate cabinet officers. Even Alexander H. Stephens, the former vice president of the Confederacy, the clerk of the House, refuses to include the Southern representatives in his roll call, and they are denied elected seats. I'm going to skip past it and get to the Reconstruction. Okay. In April of 1866, another piece of moderate Republican legislation, the Civil Rights Bill, grants citizenship and the same rights enjoyed by white citizens to all male persons of the United States, without distinction of race or color, or previous condition of slavery or involuntary servitude. It did say all males. It passes both houses of Congress by overwhelming majorities, and when President Johnson vetoes it, Congress overrides the veto, making the bill the first major piece of legislation enacted by a presidential veto. Enacted over a presidential veto. Put my glasses on. The rift between Congress and the president is complete. Okay, May 1st of 1866. Radical violence rages in Memphis, Tennessee for 3 days as whites assault blacks on the street. In the aftermath, 48 people, nearly all black, are dead, and hundreds of black homes, churches, and schools have been pillaged or burned. Black homes, black people, this was 1866, right after slavery. Black people started progressing, and they didn't like that. Okay, June 13th, Congress sends the Fourth Amendment to the states. It writes the Republican revision of how post-Civil War American society should be structured into the U.S. Constitution out the reach of the partisan politics. The amendment defines citizenship to include all people born or naturalized in the United States, and increases the federal government power over the states to protect all Americans' rights. It stops short of guaranteeing blacks the right to vote. The controversial amendment will take over 2 years after being ratified. Okay, on July 24th, Tennessee is the first former Confederate state readmitted back to the Union. Okay, July 30th, riot breaks out in New Orleans, Louisiana. A white mob attacks blacks and radical Republicans attending a black suffrage conference, killing 40 people. Trying to get to the next Reconstruction, because that's what my next topic is on Reconstruction. Okay, the new session of Congress, this is March 2nd, 1867. The new session of Congress begins to pass additional Reconstruction laws, overriding President Johnson's vetoes and beginning a more hardline attitude towards the South, known as Radical Reconstruction. The new policies divide the South into military districts and require the states to adopt new constituents, introduce new constitutions, introduce black suffrage, and ratify the 14th Amendment. July 31st, President Andrew Johnson tells Ulysses S. Grant that he intends to fire Secretary of War Edwin Stanton, who has been a consistent opponent of the president and is close to the radical Republicans who dominate Congress. Stanton has refused to resign, and Congress has supported him through the tenure of the Office Act, which requires the consent of Congress to removal. At the same time, Congress has weakened the president's role of the Army through the Command of the Army Act, which requires that all military orders the president have the approval of the General of the Army, Grant. Johnson believes the Tenure of Office Act is unconstitutional and hopes to defeat the effort to force Stanton upon him by employing the popular Grant. Yeah, I'm trying to get back to the Reconstruction part. It's talking about states being readmitted to the Union. Okay, July 28th of 1868, the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution defines citizenship to include all people born or naturalized in the U.S. is finally ratified. September of 1868, black elected officials. That showed that black people had been elected to offices because in many of the southern states they had the number. So black people wouldn't just sit around waiting on those 40 acres and mule and the 40 acres and a mule in reparations. They were getting some things done. This was in 1868, just 3 years after the end of slavery, the official end of slavery. Okay, September of 1868. Black elected officials are ousted from the Georgia state legislature. The Negro is unfit to rule the state, the Atlanta Constitution declares. The black legislators appeal to President Grant to intervene to get them readmitted, which takes a year. So you see, black people were running the state of Georgia in 1868, right after slavery. So when we're left alone and able to do what we need to do, we get it done. But the thing about it, we kept being interfered with. Every time we made progress, there was backlash that ruined our progress. November 3rd, Grant is elected president, winning an electoral college majority of 214 to 80 over his Democratic opponent. But the popular majority is only 306 in a total vote of 5,715,000. Newly enfranchised black men in the South cast 700,000 votes for the Republican ticket. So you see that back at that time, the Republican was the progressive party for black people. It's not the Republican Party you know of now. Well, at least the old Republican Party, they're gone. We got MAGA now. But black people was getting things done. Elected, was voting. 700,000. These were black men in the South. See, women weren't allowed to vote then. Not black or white women. They cast 700,000 votes for the Republican ticket. Okay. February 26, 1869, Congress passes the 15th Amendment, which attempts to address Southern poll violence by stating that the right to vote can not be denied on the basis of race or color or previous condition of servitude. It is sent to the states for ratification. April, in April, in its 5-3 Texas versus White decision, the Supreme Court declares radical Reconstruction constitutional, stating that secession from the Union is illegal. Okay. In the fall, violence against blacks continued throughout the South. In October, Georgia legislator Abraham Colby is kidnapped and whipped. You see, they were getting too prosperous. Black people, when left alone, we can handle our business. And yours too, because they were being elected all over the South. Not the North, in the South, because black people had the numbers in the South. Okay, January 10th, 1870. See, this is not long after slavery ended. So you see, black people was prospering right after slavery for some people who wasn't supposed to know how to read or write. January 10th, Grant proposes a treaty of annexation with Santo Domingo in an attempt to find land for freed slaves to settle. Under Grant's plan, freed slaves will be able to relocate to the Caribbean island of Dominican Republic today, which would be the Dominican Republic today. The treaty is opposed by the Senate Foreign Relations Committee headed by Charles Sumner and will never be confirmed. So they don't want us here, but they don't want us to go. Okay, so I'm showing you the different Reconstruction. I'm trying to find where they went back to Jim Crow. Okay. In 1873, articles began to appear in the New York Tribune accusing black lawmakers in the South of corruption. That was just because they didn't want them there. April 13th, the Colfax Massacre. The white leader, paramilitary group intent on securing white rule in Louisiana, clashes with Louisiana's almost all black state militia. The resulting death toll is staggering. Only 3 members of the White League died, but some of 100 black men are killed. Of those, nearly half were all murdered in cold blood after they surrendered. Okay, September 18th, the Panic of 1873 began with the failure of a Wall Street banking firm spread through the stock exchange and eventually lead to widespread unemployment. Okay, 1874. Fall of 1874, the political tide has finally turned in the Democrats' favor. They win control of Congress as stories of black political corruption continues, Southern violence, and a terrible economic depression occupy public attention. March 1st, 1875, as one of the last acts, the Republican-led Congress passes the Civil Rights Bill of 1875, prohibiting segregation in public facilities. The law would stand only until 1883, when the Supreme Court would strike it down. Following a bitterly 1877, following a bitterly disputed presidential contest between Republican Rutherford B. Hayes and Democrat Samuel Tilden, in which both candidates claimed victory, Hayes is declared president in a backroom political deal. The Republicans agreed to abandon Reconstruction policy in exchange for the presidency. Reconstruction policies officially end. The South confines, codifies, and enforces segregation. Violations of black civil rights will not command national attention again until after World War II. So this Reconstruction, that's when Jim Crow and all that came in. And it lasted until after World War II, and then there was still segregation until 1964, the Civil Rights Act. I said all that to say that what's going on now is nothing new. But what Trump is doing, changing the laws, stripping black people of their rights, it's been done before. Anytime black people start progressing, like I said, anytime there's black progress, that's white backlash. You see, if you notice, ever since a black man was elected president of the United States, this nation has gone crazy. That's when they start talking about the browning of America. That's what they're doing now by they're allowing in white people from other countries, trying to keep the white majority. It was said that by 1850, white people will lose their majority, and they don't seem to be able to function. Well, they're not in control of everything. They have to have everything, or they feel that they have nothing. They have to have a distinct advantage, or they feel because they don't want to compete on an even playing field. To be someone who's supposed to be superior, they refuse to compete on an even playing field. What are they afraid of? We're supposed to be inferior. And don't get me wrong, I'm talking about the system of white people. We have some white people who are siding with us. As a matter of fact, they've done most of the protesting on our behalf lately. So don't get me wrong. We have some white people who I'm not speaking about them. When I speak of this, I'm speaking of the system. Because on a personal level, we get along fine. It's the system that I'm speaking of. Okay, but I'm not gonna make any excuses. Y'all just taking them where you want to. I don't know how to make any excuses, so I'm taking it back. Don't know how to make any excuses for us. Let it fall where it may. When you talk about us, you don't say I'm not talking about all blacks. I'm just talking about some. You just say blacks. So I'm just gonna say whites, and I let it fall where it may. So, but look, what happened and what happening with the Latinos now? See, Latinos used to be honorary whites. See, back when black men was getting killed, Emmett Till killed for wishing at a white woman, that was Lucy and Ricky Ricardo all over TV. White women making songs about their Latin lover. But what happened? Latinos used to vote Republican and refused to vote for a black candidate. But something happened. What was that? Latinos fooled them. They voted for a man by the name, overwhelmingly, for a man by the name of Barack Obama, and helped him to become president. And that's when they became the new Negro, the new N-words, a part of it. That before they were honorary white. They got all the privilege of white folks, and they treated us like that. They treated us like the same way white people did. Look at most of the policemen who have killed black people. They had Latino surname or Latino or Italian surnames. Let that sink in. Okay. They saw that black people they're gaining too much. And you know every time, you know how black people always had this saying, every time we gain by obeying the rules, they change the rules. That's why they wanted to change. I heard a lot of white talk show hosts talking about maybe after Obama was elected, maybe we need to change how we elect the president. Again, trying to change the rules. Anytime we make gains, the rules change. Anytime, all during the period we've been here, every time we made economic progress, it was burned down or they changed laws to prevent us from doing so. You see, I once had this guy, he was a Nazi, but he tried not to let me know he worked with me. But I told him, I don't care what you are, you just better not bother me. You can be whatever you want to. You can hate me, I can hate you. Maybe I hate you. But as long as I don't bother you, you better not bother me. He was talking about, see, the Germans and different people, they came over here. They didn't, nobody get them no hands out. They worked hard. I said, so what you trying to tell me? Black people didn't work hard? Let's look at that. When Europeans came over here, they were given farms. They were given land. We weren't. They were given the tools and everything to maintain that farm. We weren't. When they made when they finally brought in welfare, black people couldn't get it. Immigrants came over and got it. White immigrants, we couldn't. They had to make a law for us to get it. Everything, any kind of gains black people made, we had to fight for it where other people got it. So the very people they were talking about was given everything are the very ones who wasn't given nothing. And the ones they say worked hard, they was the ones giving everything. When black soldiers came back from World War II, they couldn't get homes through the Veterans Act for buying homes. The black soldiers couldn't get it. Matter of fact, after World War I, that was black soldiers came here and was lynched in their uniforms. So, and then there was redlining. Black people couldn't get mortgages for homes. That's why many black people started moving in white areas. So because they couldn't get a loan for those in the black area, and the way a lot of black people started getting homes when white people started running and was leaving their homes, and the black people bought it straight from the owner, paid them in time. They had the mortgage, and black people traded, made monthly payments to the owner of the home who's running to get away from black people. That's how a lot of black people was able to buy homes from the owner, not through the banks. Matter of fact, during the Great Depression, you don't hear black people talking about the Great Depression. You don't want to know why? Because, see, a lot of people lost their money when the banks collapsed. Black people weren't allowed to keep their money in banks. Just a few. Most banks didn't allow it. So that's why you remember how they used to talk about when those old people died, they kept money under the floor and kept money hidden in the wall and all. That's how black people kept money. Because they couldn't keep it in the banks. It was very few banks that allowed black people to keep money there, and they usually cheated them out of it. So then we come up further to the civil rights movement. Now, all of those laws that black people marched and died for, Trump just wiped them out. Because many of them was executive orders. And Congress didn't vote on it. So he wiped them out. So here we go to another reconstruction. Black man became president. Now they're afraid that black people are getting too big when most of us not doing all that much. But they see a black man in a high place. And they were so angry about this, especially Trump tried to like he wasn't born here. And that really made them angry.